Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you all today. So we're going to be covering Swordsoul Tenyi here. I got our deck profile for Season 12, although I will admit this one is not too terribly different from Season 11 or some of the other seasons past. Swordsoul Tenyi is, at this stage, what I would consider to be mostly a solved deck. As a result, my list hasn't really changed, I don't think much at all, even though I did rebuild the deck from the ground up. At the beginning of the season here, as I like to do at the beginning of each season with all my decks. I think we landed on just about the exact, if not the exact same list as before. But before we talk too much about the list here, I just want to real quick, once again, shout out my Patreon page that I have started recently. That went live last week. I've been having a lot of fun uploading content over there. There's going to be bonus content over there that's not on the channel, previews, and a whole bunch of other perks. If you feel like supporting the channel over there, just $5 a month, which is, you know, the same you pay for a pack. Instead of just a bunch of boring filler, you're going to get a whole bunch of extra content from yours truly. So definitely feel free to check out the link in the description below if you'd like to support the channel and, again, get some more daily content. But anyway, back to the list here. Like I was saying, Swordsoul Tenyi, I consider to be pretty much a solved deck at this point. Now, what do I mean when I say a quote-unquote solved deck? Well, the term actually comes from the phrase solved game, which is the idea of a game that you can play out the same way every single time and win every single time. Now, I'm not saying this deck does win every single time, but when I call it a solved deck, really what I'm referring to is the list itself. Swordsoul Tenyi is one of those decks where, when it comes to the actual list, pretty much everybody's running the same, like 35, 36, 37 cards, and then it's really those like last 3 slots that are like the only tech choices in the deck. And it's not like other decks where certain tech choices can, you know, affect your plays drastically. You know, like Baronne de Fluer, for example, we recently decided to try out that that disgusting line where you put Ido on your opponent's side of the board. Yeah, that was like a very small tech choice, only 2 card difference, but it drastically changed the way the deck plays. That doesn't really happen with Swordsoul Tenyi. Pretty much ever since the deck came out, well, there was the Halka line, to be fair, but even that line would typically end on what you like to end on most of the time, which is, you know, Chi plus Baronne, and then usually Protos as well, or ideally Protos as well. And as far as that goes, like, the deck hasn't really changed at all. And so, like, when I look at this list here, and I'm looking at, like, flex spots is another term I've used a bit in the past. Those are basically spots in the deck where you can afford to, like, try out a new card. It doesn't have to be that card every single time. Flex spots in this deck, I mean, there really aren't that many, to be totally honest. Harpie's Finiduster is pretty much always a flex spot in any deck I put it in, but I still like to dedicate a slot to it. You can still play something over it. The Sacred Summit is a flex spot, although I've seen a lot of builds playing this card, although it's definitely not needed. After that, it's like, I don't know, Valor is a flex spot. You could argue some amount of the Imperms are flex spots, but like, that's really all there. And even then, I would say you still very much want 3 Imperms, especially in this format, against Baronne de Fluer and other Swordsoul Tenyi decks. But honestly, like, yeah, there's really only, as far as I can see, this list, like 3 flex spots, and you know, no tech choice you put in is going to drastically affect how the deck plays. So in that regard, I do feel that maybe Swordsoul Tenyi, and I feel like part of the reason that some people have chosen not to play this deck is that it feels a little bit stagnant at this point. It's funny, I actually see that complaint sometimes on the Master Duel well, I've seen complaints on the Master Duel subreddit about Swordsoul being overpowered since its release. No, Swordsoul is not overpowered, and I've actually made a tweet to this effect before. Like, if you think Swordsoul is what's ruining Yu-Gi-Oh!, like, I fear for your mental health in the upcoming formats. But in any case, yeah, no, Swordsoul has just been, like, a very consistent mainstay, but I think their consistency has caused them to feel a little bit like, I don't know, I guess what I was getting at is that I feel like some people are a little sick of seeing Swordsouls just due to them, like, doing the same thing over and over again, and I think that's justifiable. I don't want to say I wholeheartedly agree or anything, because I do still think this deck is fun, but, you know, it's like, there are only so many times you can Chi plus Baronne somebody, you know. I do understand that notion as well. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and break down the list card by card here, and then as always, we've got a few games for us to look at here. So, in this build, we are playing 1 Effect Veiler, 2 Tenyi Spirit Adhara, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Tenyi Spirit Shthana, 3 Swordsoul of Mo Ye, 2 Swordsoul of Taia, 2 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, 2 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirirt Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirirt Ashuna, 1 Nibiru, the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 3 Swordsoul Emergence, 1 Swordsoul Sacred Summit, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Heavenly Dragon Circle, 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 Swordsoul Blackout. Extra deck is going to have 1 Yazi, Evil of the Zing, 2 Baxia, Brightness of the Zing, 1 Draco, Berserker of the Tenyi, 1 Adamancipator, Risen Dragite, 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Chi, 1 Chao Feng, Phantom of the Zing, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Chengying, 1 Swordsoul Sinister Sovereign Qixing Longyuan, 3 Monk of the Tenyi, and then finally 1 Shaman of the Tenyi. One other thing about the list that I do need to point out real quick is that in my deck overview for Season 12 video that I did at the start of the season, that list was actually wrong, and it was actually wrong for most of the time I was in this play session for these games we're going to see, but I accidentally had 3 Swordsoul of Taia in the deck and only 2 Infinite Impermanence. Definitely should have been the other way around with 2 Taia and 3 Imperm. I don't know if anybody even noticed that. I haven't seen any comments yet. I just wanted to address that real quick. In any case, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. So this first duel is going to be against who else but good old Branded Despia, and my opponent is actually using the variant with Expulsion and Ido. They didn't get it on me this game, but they were actually playing it, so. Alright, let's see what we open with here. Going first, this is a very, very good opening hand. This is just about the ideal opening hand, honestly. Maybe if Maxx was Ash Blossom instead. But this is pretty close. It's going to be a very classic Mo Ye plus Longyuan into, of course, the Chi plus Baron. We've got the Called By and the Heavenly Dragon Circle for backup as well. Heavenly Dragon Circle, what I mean when I say this is for a backup is, if you're in a situation where your Mo Ye is getting Veilered or Impermed, then you can use the Heavenly Dragon Circle to activate it, tribute your Mo Ye, and then you can add the Tenyi Spirirt Shthana, the level 4 water one, to your hand. And then, your Mo Ye will get negated, or rather your Mo Ye will get tributed. It won't get negated, you'll still get your Swordsoul token, and then because you only control a normal monster, you can actually special summon the Shthana from your hand and then make your Chi that way. Alright, so yeah, we got a very solid setup here of the classic Chi plus Baron, and we have 3 back rows to go along with it. Obviously, these 2 are going to be the disruption. This one is being set just in case it's needed. Like, if our opponent's going to destroy the Chi or something, we can flip this up and get a search anyway. So we've also got the Maxx in hand. Now, my opponent started off with a branded opening. You might have noticed that I did not respond with Maxx. Actually, the reason I chose not to Maxx here is because I didn't think my opponent was going to get any more summons this turn, nor did I think Maxx was going to stop my opponent from making plays. Typically branded decks, especially going second, but even going first, will just play out through Maxx because their average plays don't do that many special summons anyway. So I thought it was kind of a waste of a Maxx. I thought there might be a better situation for it later, especially because my plan was to negate the Zalibur and use my disruption to stop them from doing any summoning at all. Then this way, if I need to later in the turn, I could still Maxx if I go to negate a summon effect and then negate that, and I am just out of back rows at that point. In that scenario, then yes, I will have missed out on 1 draw, but I think that scenario does not happen often at all. I think the vast majority of the time this is going to be my opponent's only special summon this turn, which is why I did not Maxx there. So yeah, I'm going to use Chi to negate the Alibur, like I said. I don't want to use my Imperm, because the Imperm obviously is a limited resource. It's a one-time thing. Once I flip it up, it's gone. Chi, on the other hand, can be used multiple times. So, yeah, opponent's going to drop a Branded Fusion. I'm obviously going to use the Baron negate on that. There's no way I'm letting that resolve. And then, yeah, they just set 2 cards and pass. So like I said, the opponent only got 1 summon. That was my plan for the turn. And if they had negated my Baron, then I could have fired off Maxx. Again, would have missed out on 1 draw, but I'm fine with that. Now here, I am actually going to use Maxx in response to the branded opening, even though, again, I anticipate this is probably the only draw my opponent's going to get this turn. Well, actually, that's not necessarily true, because the face down could pretty easily be Well, I guess they don't have anything to add for Branded in red. Could be a super poly though, but the reason I'm willing to maxi this branded opening as opposed to the last branded opening is that I value the draw on my turn a lot more than I value the draw on the opponent's turn. The draw on my turn, especially in this scenario, like yeah, it just ended up being a Vishuda, which isn't that great in this scenario, but it could have easily been like a Taia, right? Or an Emergence, or you know, Mo Ye wouldn't have really done that much, but I still could have potentially made plays with Heavenly Dragon Circle. So yeah, it might seem weird. It's like, well, wait, you didn't maxi the brand open on your opponent's turn, but you are willing to do it on your turn. And again, yes, because I value the draw a lot more highly right now than I did during my opponent's turn. Also, a lot of the reason I'm willing to let these branded openings resolve is that they're going to cost a card from my opponent's hand. I know that Branded Despia is a very resource-intensive deck. Often how it wins is by accruing a lot of advantage and just outvaluing the opponent in that way. So I'm definitely willing to let them use these branded openings, lose out on advantage to summon Albert that my Chi was just going to negate. And also, now that my opponent's only down to one card, like, yeah, I'm not, like, ending the game this turn. I would have ideally, you know, liked to have ended the game this turn, but since my opponent was only going to have one face-down card and the card they top deck is their only live resources, and I still have my Imperm and my Call by down, and another Chi negate because I have a Taia in the graveyard, and I've got a Nibiru in case things go, like, really, really wrong, I'm totally fine just battling over their Alibers and then passing back over to them. Yes, my Baron's Omni Negate is used, but again, I've still got a lot of disruption. My opponent has so few resources that I don't think it's going to matter too much. They do top deck the Branded in red, but I've got the Called by. This will be a bit of a double whammy, because now even if they could somehow get an Aliber this turn, it'll be negated anyway. My opponent reveals their last face-down card, which was a Called by in and of itself. I figured it was probably going to be that. There's no way, if it was Imperm, they would have used it. If it was Super Poly, they would have used it. If it was like pretty much anything else, they would have used it. So I kind of figured it had to be Called by at that point. And yet, we still actually don't quite have enough damage for lethal. Maybe if I had actually used this... no, actually, I could have gotten enough damage for lethal, couldn't I? If I'd used this Heavenly Dragon Circle to actually sack my Chi and add a Taia, then I could have made... Well, I could have made a Draco Berserker? I don't know if I actually could have gotten lethal. Well, I could have made a new Chi, Search and Emergence, gotten a Protos. Yeah, that would have been lethal. So, yeah, technically I should have ended the duel one turn earlier, but with the Blackout set, I wasn't really afraid. Well, to be fair, they didn't have anything in hand anyway, so I could have just done it. But whatever. Either way, we end up finishing the game out at roughly the same time, giving our opponent, I guess, one extra draw. But there wasn't really anything they could do with one draw in that scenario. So, in any case, let's go ahead and move on to the next duel. And for this one, we have yet another match against Branded Despia. This Branded Despia variant is a pure variant, so wasn't using Expulsion Ido combo. I don't think I saw any Edge Imp stuff either. It was I saw some Theaters, the field spell. So this time we're going second. We do have an Imperm. But fortunately, our opponent's only got one face-down card and then nothing else. Now this is like an ideal, like, going first hand. Oh, Lord. Like, I don't even know what you would do with this Emergence, really. Like, if you were going first. Like, you could add a Taia to this card, and then I guess Chi for the Sacred Summit is what you would do. So, that is one thing about Sacred Summit that I'm like, still a little iffy on, is like, it's pretty niche, its uses. You can, like, you pretty much have to open this well in order to be able to, like, actually use it in a turn 1 combo. Now, granted, it is, of course, insanely good in that turn 1 combo, because you get an additional level 8 Synchro on board, which is often going to be either your Dragite or your Draco Berserker, but yeah, other than that, the other use for it is really like as a follow-up or a backup play, which is still obviously very good as that, but... oh yeah, here I activated Emergence. I don't really know why I did. I actually should not have activated Emergence, because I'm just going to grab a Taia, which I'm not going to be able to use until the next turn anyway, so... yeah, the opponent's negates there were pretty annoying. The Imperm, mostly the Veiler though, obviously the Imperm was used to stop the Baron, so that way our... Mo Ye was going to get negated, so yeah, I don't think I'm able to find lethal, even with that like great combination of cards. Obviously with the Mo Ye getting negated, that very much complicated things. I did decide to ultimately banish the Mo Ye to summon the Protos out this turn, not just for more damage, but also in order to get the Protos online and use its effect. It's funny, I actually saw a Reddit thread recently saying that like Protos isn't really that great because it's not as good in Master Duel, and it's like, oh, I'm hearing myself from the start of Season 5. No, Protos is actually phenomenal this format. Branded Despia being the best deck, obviously Dark is a really good attribute to call. It also hurts Dragon Link and Adventure Phantom Knight, which are also up there in play, and I think up there in power level, both as well. Like, honestly, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of decks that doesn't hit, but I think it hits enough of the decks that are seeing like major play right now that it's very much worth playing. You can still build the deck without Protos if you know you're playing Sword Souls, but you don't own a Protos. Like, that's fine. Your deck obviously still, you know, more than functions. It's still very good, but that Protos is like the cherry on top, which is still very much needed in my opinion. So yeah, there's that game against Branded. Just showing off the power of Archnemesis Protos and its ability to single-handedly shut the deck down. Now, there are still plays you can make, particularly Despian Proskinian. That is a very, very good super poly target against Sword Souls in particular, if you're playing Branded Despia. You can also still make Despian Coratus, and I feel like there's like one other light fusion monster, but I could just be misremembering. Oh, there's Guardian Chimera. No, Guardian Chimera is dark. Or is it Earth? I have no idea. I really have no clue. I think it is dark, actually. But in any case, if you are playing Branded Despia and your opponent drops a Protoss on you, it's not an instant scoop. There are still some outs, but you will be kind of hard-pressed for those. They're mostly going to be super poly, and you do still have to have like the right targets in deck. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Okay, so this duel here is going to be against a Danger Dark World deck, which I've only played against a couple of times, but this is a deck that even though it's very rogue, it's still very scary to play against just because of like how much they combo on their turns, but we'll be seeing that here shortly. Anyway, I'm going to take the first turn. Now, we opened a Mo Ye, a live Mo Ye, so you can't ever complain about that, and our opponent doesn't have a negate, so we especially can't complain about that. Yep, chain blocking as always as ever. I mean, if you've played Swordsoul Tenyi for like any amount of the time, the 6 months that it's been out on Master Duel, then you know the drill here, right? Yeah, gonna search up the Longyuan, summon that to make a Baron, and we'll have an Imperm plus a Maxx in addition to the Chi Shao plus Baron, so that'll be nice. Yeah, it's funny, Chi Shao plus Baron is like such a given on your turn 1 to Swordsoul Tenyi that I'm often looking to my other disruption in addition to that, trying to determine how good the actual end board is there, so yeah, having Imperm plus Maxi in addition to the Chi Shao plus Baron, like I said, is pretty good. Opponent's going to start with the Danger Thunderbird. I will fire off a Maxi in response. I'm not going to bother negating it because I see a Danger monster, and well, actually the first thing I think when I see the Thunderbird, right, is 8-axis blind second. But then when my opponent discards a Brow Huntsman of the Dark World, then I'm like, okay, so it's either Danger Dark World or it's some kind of combo deck, like some kind of like FTK combo deck. I don't even know what FTK combo deck that would be off the top of my head, but like Danger plus Dark World monsters just like, it activates that part of my brain for some reason. So, yeah, we did draw the Ash Blossom, which is nice. Obviously not going to use it against the Brow Summon here, no need for that. And obviously not going to use it against any of the Danger monsters either. For those who aren't aware, if you haven't tried this yourself, I think I actually did do this once in Master Duel, but the Danger monster's reveal effect is not once per turn, so don't Ash Blossom it, because you'll negate the activation, the card will stay in their hand, and again, it's not a once per turn effect, so they can just activate the effect again. So definitely do not Ash Blossom Danger monsters there. The Nibiru draw is very, very nice. I will Ash Blossom this Goki pull though, because this was a little bit sus to me. I don't know. I actually should have looked a little bit harder at their deck when I was looking at it to see like what all they were going to combo out with the Goki pull. I know I've gotten wrecked by insects before, like the level 4 like normal insect archetype. So I'm definitely very wary of this Goki pull, and I'm going to Ash Blossom the shit out of it with no hesitation. Alright, so at that point, let's see, they've got more dangerous stuff. Yeah, so this game I wanted to show as like a good example of like trying to figure out when to use your negates, right? So this Allure of Darkness I actually really almost negated, which might seem a little bit weird, right? Like, why would you negate Allure of Darkness with Baron? Like, of all cards to negate, why that one? And the reason was that at that point, you know, obviously they've already drawn there too, but at that point my opponent only had one card in hand, these 3 monsters that I don't care about, and 2 face down cards, which, you know, could still be like live extenders, right? The reason my opponent's setting them is not because they're cards they want to use as disruption on my turn necessarily, but it's likely because they're cards they didn't want to discard with their danger monsters by accident. So in that case, like, it was just risky enough negating the allure that I ultimately decided not to, but I really did almost negate it here. It was a very close decision. This danger Bigfoot, however, I will negate with the Baronne de Fluer, and the reason that I'm choosing to negate this card is because my opponent does already have a Danger Thunderbird on the board. Now, this, even though this is an 8-axis blind second, they could very easily still be playing a bunch of very scary red gate monsters. I'm thinking particularly of like the Numeron, or rather the Dragalong to go into the Numeron. I don't want to have to deal with that with like a 13,000 attack monster, so I'm just going to go ahead and Baron the Danger Bigfoot to negate and destroy it. Again, if I had Ash Blossomed it, they would have been able to just use it again. I'll negate and destroy it with the Baron, so that way my opponent can't make a rank 8. They are going to go into a link 3, Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion. This card actually recently got banned in the TCG because it makes sense. Like, being able to Foolish any card when it's link summoned and then mill 3 more cards after that seems very powerful. I don't know if it was actually used in tier limits. I don't think it was actually, but anyway, I'm just going to Chi-Shao it so that way my opponent doesn't get any more extensions. Just trying to make sure my opponent runs out of gas is really what I'm trying to do here. But they do flip up more extension face down. Like I said, they've got a Pot of Avarice, so that's going to be 2 more draws. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't want to Nibiru this board. I will if I have to, but I really don't want to. But I am going to just pretty much do everything in my power to avoid doing that if possible. So here we're going to go for the access code talker, and this is actually not a situation where I feel the need to Nibiru just yet. My Imperm can actually solve this. You might be thinking, well, how can Imperm solve this? You can't use any effects in response to the summon or effect of access code talker, and if you left your toggle on here on auto, that would be the case, but if you flip it to on, you're actually able to respond with effects to the resolution of a monster's summon, which you can do to access code talker. You can't respond to the summon, but once the summon has resolved, you do have a window in which you can activate cards in response. I know that sounds really weird, but you'll just have to trust me that that is true. And I'll show you that it's true here as I flip up the Imperm after the access code effect has resolved to negate it. That'll not only keep it from popping my cards, but also put it down to only 2,300 attack points. They do still have more danger plays at this point. At this point, I'm like, oh my god, they're still going? Like, they're still going? Unfortunately, they don't have another Avarice. They did end up getting rid of that, so that's nice. I don't have to worry about that at least. And I do still have the Maxx draws coming in, so like, there's really only so much my opponent can do here. Oh, they did actually have a 3rd Avarice. Wow. No, or rather a 2nd Avarice. Well, 3rd, you know what I mean. They do have all 3 Pot of Avarice in the graveyard. Excuse me. Even though they only activated 2 of them. But no, yeah, at this point they go for the Nightmare Unicorn, and I'm just sitting here like, wait, what else is there to go for at this point? Like, what else? But then, no, there actually is not anything else to go for. I was like, they've already used the access code talker. They're not going to, like... Well, no, they actually put it back with the Pot of Avarice, didn't they? Ooh, that could have been lethal with the right draws, actually. I didn't even think about them putting the access code back, but it was very close, very close to me losing this duel, to me not having enough disruption slash responses, but ultimately we did manage to get there, thankfully. But yeah, so again, wanted to show this game just to kind of talk about using, like, just the timing of responses. Like, it's one thing to have the disruption, the Chi-Shao, the Baron, plus other stuff, but to know when to use it is very much its own skill as well. Alright, there is that duel wrapped up there. I've got one more for us to watch. Let's jump straight into it. And finally, to wrap things up here, we have a mirror match. Another Swordsoul Tenyi deck. Yes, it was running Tenyi's deck. Well, it's like, I don't know, a lot of the time I'm like, do I even still call this Swordsoul Tenyi? Like, it should just be Swordsoul at this point, right? Like, what other variant is there? That's the other thing about Swordsoul that I actually forgot to mention is, like, unlike most other decks, even tier 1 decks, like, you know, we see the branded engine fit into a lot of decks. We see Dragon Link have a ton of different engines it can use, but Swordsoul really is always Swordsoul Tenyi, isn't it? Oh yeah, so here, I just want to talk about this chain link real quick. My opponent's going to start with Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, normal summoning it, and then activating its effect. I'm going to Ash Blossom actually instead of Maxx initially. Because, and I talked about this actually in the first game a little bit, but if I'm going to stop plays, I'd rather do that than just Maxx them and draw a bunch of cards. I feel like that's just greedy, honestly, to do that. Now, in this hand, I actually might have wanted to do that just because this hand is, like, not great at all. It's actually pretty bad, but generally speaking, I think it's better just stop their plays outright than to be like, well, I'll just Maxx and then try to get a bunch of draws. When you have the option to stop their plays, I think you should take it. Now, they do have the Crossout Exterminator, unfortunately, for my Ash Blossom, but we still have the Maxx as a backup plan. The other thing, too, about that interaction is that Ash Blossom, keep in mind, does have to be chained directly to the effect it's trying to negate. Maxx, on the other hand, can be used at any time. You can just discard it willy-nilly. So that is another reason why I did it in that order, because if I had tried to Maxx, then I wouldn't have had an opportunity to Ash Blossom the Ecclesia if the Maxx got negated. So yeah, even though the Ecclesia will resolve, we'll still get a whole bunch of draws off of it. Well, not a whole bunch. We'll get at least 3, though, right? Well, at least 1, whatever Ecclesia summons, but if Ecclesia is going to summon Mo Ye or something like they do here, then we'll get 3 draws. We'll get the draw for the token and then the draw for the Chi Shao as well. So this Maxx will ultimately end up being a +1. My opponent's going to just use the Chi Shao to search for a Blackout and then pass, which if you get Maxx'd while playing Sword Souls, I think my opponent definitely did the right line here. Just make Chi Shao search for Blackout and then pass. Usually, if you're not using Ecclesia, that only gives your opponent 2 draws, but because my opponent did use Ecclesia here, they gave me 3 instead. That's another reason, actually, that whole first turn is a reason why I don't play 3 Ecclesia, why I only play 2. Ecclesia is much better going second when you can actually special summon her. If you have to normal summon Ecclesia, then you're opening up your place getting Ash Blossomed, which normally Swordsoul Tenyi is fairly resistant to Ash Blossom. That card usually doesn't disrupt their plays horribly, but it does if you use Ecclesia, and then it can also give them additional draws off Maxx as well. So yeah, my hand is looking a lot better actually, following that those Maxx draws. I can actually use Vishuda, Monk into Vishuda to get the Chi Shao off the board. That way that, you know, not only will that not be a threat, but also the Blackout won't be a threat either. And then from here, I've actually got the the quad effect, I guess you could say, of Longyuan, Mo Ye, Taia, and then even the Sacred Summon as well to get the Chi Shao plus Baronne plus another level 8 synchro. Not that I need all that in order to end the game. Yeah, my opponent's just going to concede at this point because, like, really all you need is Monk plus Chi Shao plus Baronne. That's enough for lethal with the 1200 that Longyuan does. So I had lethal more than secured at that point. We had the call by for backup as well, which is very nice to have. So yeah, there's those games there. Now let's move on to the outro. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate that you're watching all the way to the end. That does mean a lot to me, not only personally, but is a great way to support the channel. Other ways to support the channel, obviously, if you want to comment or subscribe, those are always appreciated. Comments, as always, definitely let me know what you think of the build slash gameplay there. Always looking for that constructive criticism. And yeah, another way to support the channel, if you're interested, like I mentioned at the beginning, is the Patreon page. If you're interested in checking that out and getting some exclusive daily content for just $5 a month, then yeah, feel free to check that out. Any support there is very much greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of my current patrons over there. But yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.